the later in the book, where they kind of do more of a comparison between, they compare what I've just talked about logistically with Rome, with the British Empire, for instance. And I think it's interesting because at a glance, you would assume that it wouldn't things wouldn't play out in exactly kind of the same way, right? Because we had railways. I'm going to sneeze as well. I'm going to really quickly take a quick second. You can really feel the sneeze, and I think when you're on a podcast, you don't factor in sneezing. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, it humanises us, doesn't it?
We're real. We're not AI. We're real people.
People realise, much as they might think we're these lofty geniuses, really, it's good to just show them that we're at heart we're just like them, really. So
we're just two normal dudes talking about history. Guys. That's just how it is.
But British Empire, Roman Empire.
Yeah. So you would assume, based off the fact that we can look back at the Roman Empire and look at that statement itself, right, that a cart of grain would double in price every 50 miles, right, and then we compare that to the British Empire in sort of the 1800s or so, where we had railways, ships, all kinds of global trade. The British Empire spanned across the whole world, pretty much. But it's interesting that some of the parallels that the book mentions about Rome play out in exactly the same way with the British Empire. Most notably in places like India, which I'll cover in a bit. But sticking to Rome for a second. So we're talking about logistics, right? So Rome has expanded to this great size. They span all the way from Britain to Egypt. Yeah. What is happening in Rome at this point is that whereas Rome as the Republic used to be very Rome centric and very centered on the city of Rome and the surrounding region, as the empire expanded, it became more and more costly for resources from Rome to be traded to the far flung kind of lands of Britain and so on. So when Rome colonized or conquered these places, rather than colonized, when they conquered these places, they established regional government, they established infrastructure, they established kind of farmland, agricultural practices, all the different things that they had in Rome. They would establish them in these, far-flung regions of the empire. And with that, the dependency on resources from Rome dropped. So all of a sudden, if you're a Roman regional bureaucrat and you own like 3 farms in like Yorkshire, right? It wasn't called Yorkshire obviously back then. Let's be real, but just for context for modern viewers,
Yorkshire or something. Yeah,
yeah, Yorkshire, yeah.
Jorvik, or no, actually
that's more Viking, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly. But you get the point. So. If you're a regional Roman bureaucrat and you own 3 farms, you're a real landowner empire, right, in Yorkshire, Northern England, and you need grain. You're not going to import grain from Rome. You're going to learn how to grow it yourself.
Of course,
and try because it's cheaper.
The import tax would be insane to just cover the cost of its travelling from A to B.
Well, again, imagine that cart of grain doubling in price every 50 miles from middle Italy to Scotland.
Yeah, that's mental, isn't it? Yeah,
that's a lot of doubling.
Exactly.
So this kind of played out in a lot of different ways. Obviously, Rome itself as an entity became a lot richer because of the different places that it ruled, and obviously the power was consolidated within Rome. That's where the government, the imperial government was, where like the emperor was, and there was a lot of emphasis on Rome still. But the longer that as time went on, and Rome wasn't necessarily conquering loads of new places, but they were sort of consolidating what they had. These different regions developed economically, and they developed their own industry, their own farming, their own kind of regional government, and their own ways of working. And they start working, interlinked. Colonies in Gaul would be maybe trading with colonies in southern England. This is something that was very, these things took place before the Romans, and they took place during the Romans as well. Yeah. And they took place after the Romans. But what's interesting is that obviously as time goes on, you would expect, based on our kind of modern understanding of empire or our assumptions about empire, that as the empire expanded and developed these different places, that all of the power and all of the wealth and all of the kind of development would be centered around the capital. When it really wasn't the case. So
Well, and it's sort of, little capitals are going to pop up everywhere, and there's going to be centres because of that distance, as you say, that doubling of price every 50 miles. It's You're going to have nice little local centres of power, and also I think another parallel with the British. I don't know if they bring it up in the book, is the sort of ruling through local chiefs, local kings, all that kind of stuff. I think in certain areas it was direct rule. I think probably in Britain it was more of a direct rule because it was quite difficult to get the various tribes to work with them and to work together and all that kind of stuff. But certainly um, in the Middle East, you had sort of King Herod in I want to say Jerusalem, but in sort of Palestine
the
slash
Levant.
Israel. Yeah, the Levant. Yeah. Well, actually, and it's an interesting side note. It's actually called Palestine by Palestine comes from Philistine, which was the enemy of the Jews, and so Rome's final kind of slap in the face to the Jews was when expelling them was to call that region Palestine. Just an interesting historical note. But you've got if you're ruling through local leaders, those local leaders are going to be far more powerful and far more savvy, and they're going to pick things up from you than if you are doing everything for everybody. So if you're kind of the be all and end all, and then you leave, everybody goes, well, what do? We don't know because we didn't. Nobody showed us what we were doing. Whereas if you're quite light touch, like in certain regions, like they were there, it's a different sort of story. So when we have the same thing with the British and the Mughals, it's there's heavy-handed stuff going on in certain places, but overall it's ruling through secondary, through local leaders. And so those leaders are going to look at it and go, this is interesting. I can get this out of it. I can learn how to do this. I can learn from this presence in a way that maybe I couldn't have if they were totally running everything.
Yeah, and also I know one of the kind of the follow-ons from that is that obviously as regions develop and they sort of get more accustomed to running their own region rather than necessarily being ruled by someone else directly. The runoff is that obviously they become very self-sufficient. They form their own connections with local regions that are around them, and they obviously build their own kind of soft power base. I mean, with Rome, obviously when they conquered a land, they would bring Roman structures of government. They would bring Roman agriculture and building techniques and military formations and all these other things. And over time, all these regions would learn from the Romans, and that was kind of the idea. They were Romanizing different places. They were turning them into more parts that were like Rome.